Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber and alongside me is Logan Camden. And today we're going to be addressing the big news on everybody's minds, our NFL midseason awards. Hopefully we can provide a little bit of a break from the election yesterday and all the subsequent discourse, giving out our midseason awards, which is always one of our favorite activities halfway through the NFL season, Logan. We'll start with the big one, MVP. Who is your midseason MVP?
My midseason MVP is the guy who was my preseason MVP, and that is Josh Allen of your Buffalo Bills, Carson. This season, Josh has put up 20 touchdowns with just 4 turnovers, 2,000 passing yards, 211 rushing yards, a passer rating of 105.8 with a completion percentage of 64%. Josh, in my opinion, Carson, has always been the best playmaking quarterback in the NFL. Big-time passing shots, deep downfield, the rushing ability. He's one of the best scrambling quarterbacks in NFL history. And I was thinking about this. Tell me where you think. I think he's a top 5 scrambler ever. I would have Lamar, Vic, Justin Fields, Cam Newton, and Josh Allen. But
so you're talking just scramble to run.
Yeah, to run. But hear me out. Considering red zone success, I think he's arguable like top 3 with Lamar and Vic. Cam probably still has a little bit of an edge over him, but like
he
that,
Cam are the 2 red zone goats. They're
100%.
the 2 short down, short distance, just monsters.
I don't think there's ever been anybody better, and he's an elite self-creator too. Like you see the game against Miami, that touchdown to Quentin Morris was unreal, man. Buying all that time, like it's a play that only Josh Allen can make happen, and he's as close to a one-man offense as any player has ever been. He's elite situationally. They're number 4 in the red zone this year. They're only the number 21 third down offense, but routinely this team has been number 1 in both categories, red zone and on third downs. And like we always talk about on the show, he is now blending that elite playmaking with remarkably controlled football. 4 turnovers this year. It's the tied 3rd fewest turnovers by a quarterback this season, and even like last game, we talked about it, that interception bounced right off Keon Coleman's hands, right? That's not on Josh Allen at all. It's the most accurate and surgical Josh Allen has ever been. He is killing you underneath in a way that he never really has before, taking everything underneath, all checkdowns, protecting the football. That game against Miami, that's what stood out on tape. It's him just taking every short pass that they give him and methodically marching down the field. He seemingly makes every play, and I just don't think there's anyone playing the position better. I think Lamar makes the best case. I think Herbert or Jaden Daniels makes the second best case right now. And understand what I mean when I say this. Mahomes is still my number 1 quarterback. I wouldn't bet against Patrick Mahomes, but just objectively how they're playing the position right now, I don't think anyone's doing it better than Josh. And working against Lamar, because I think Lamar has also, him and Josh, I think have the 2 best MVP cases right now. I think the fact that Lamar does have Derick Henry works against him this season directly in his MVP case. And I think they both enhance one another. I think Lamar enhances Derick Henry. I think Derick Henry enhances Lamar. Josh doesn't have that luxury. Like if Josh Allen was out, I don't know if the Bills have won a game this year. Josh makes that big of a difference individually, and that's why I would give him the award. I do think this is the best team of the Josh Allen era, but it's also partially due to Josh's improvement individually. And I think this is the best version of Josh Allen we've ever seen. So him and Lamar, I think both have really good cases at this award. But considering the fact that Lamar has one of the best offensive players in football this year flanking him, I'm partial to Josh. But both have had tremendous seasons this year.
I think that this has been a 2-man race for most of the year. That's been clear, and I think that this is a 2-man race. If you were to make an MVP case for anybody other than Lamar or Josh, I wouldn't really hear you out. And I can see the argument for Josh that you made at the end there. Take him off the team and the Buffalo Bills would fall apart. He doesn't have a Derick Henry, right? He doesn't have an A-plus sort of weapon like that in this offense. This isn't the most outstanding season from Josh in terms of production. This isn't the season in which we've seen the most ludicrous playmaking from him, but what it is the most controlled Josh that we've ever seen in regular season. A Josh who is playing mistake-free football, who is taking fewer negative plays when you consider how he's limiting turnovers, when you consider that he is the best quarterback in the NFL at avoiding sacks. He's doing a better job at that than anybody else in the sport right now. And you know how much I love Josh Allen, Logan. Nobody loves Josh Allen on the planet more than me. All that being said, I'm taking Lamar Jackson as my midseason MVP. Lamar is on pace, Logan, for 4,500 passing yards, 38 passing touchdowns against 4 interceptions, 950 rushing yards, and 4 rushing touchdowns. He is averaging 9.3 passing yards per attempt, which leads the league, has a passer rating of 120.7, which leads the league, a QBR of 77.3, which leads the league, the highest touchdown percentage of any quarterback in football, and he's third in passing yards. Lamar has ascended to such a level as a passer that is clearly a cut above even what he did last year in his second MVP season, which was the best we've seen him as a passer. He is such a monster from inside the pocket now. He is so consistently an eyes downfield guy when he is in a scramble situation, and it's just made him a more complete, even more overwhelmingly dominant player because at the same time, he's third in the league across all positions in rushing yards per attempt, 6 rushing yards per attempt, and of course he leads all quarterback in rushing yards. So I understand the Henry point. I understand that there is this resentment building for Lamar racking up these MVPs because it hasn't translated to the postseason, right? You asked me, who do I think is the better quarterback? Who do I want for a playoff game? I'm still taking Josh Allen because the track record there's such a vast difference between the two of them. And I do trust Josh more as a pure thrower of the football. But that doesn't have any bearing on this regular season award. And Lamar is on pace to have one of the great regular seasons that we've ever seen, dude. A 4,500, 1,000-yard season damn near with 42 total touchdowns to 4 interceptions. I just don't think that the fact that, yeah, Josh is working with inferior weapons makes up for that sort of gap in production. And frankly, I just think Lamar has been more outstanding this year. They've both been awesome. And as I say, Josh is eliminating negative plays better than ever before and better than anybody in football. And if you said that about Josh Allen, most people wouldn't believe it. Most people would be shocked at that fact. It's not that surprising if you've watched Josh Allen in high-stakes situations, but for him to do it without a true number one receiver this year at the level he has, it's incredibly impressive. But the thing is, Logan, Lamar also doesn't take sacks, right? I mean, these are the two best quarterbacks in football at evading sacks. Lamar also isn't turning the ball over, and he's been more dynamic. He's been more productive. He's been more efficient. I still think he's working with an average offensive line. I still think his receiving core, getting Deontay Johnson now, but he hasn't suited up for them yet, is just solid, right? I like Zay Flowers. I think the depth in the group is fine, but it's not like he's dealing with some overloaded offense here. He's that special, and he's one of the greatest regular season quarterbacks that we've ever seen, and this is the best season we've seen from him. This tops his 2019 season because of what he's doing as a passer. He's my midseason MVP.
Yeah, I don't want to disparage Lamar's case because he has a very good one. He is on pace for 12 total turnovers. He also has 4 fumbles lost this year, which I think is important to mention in these cases. He's not throwing picks. He's been really well there, but he has a few fumbles this year. But Lamar has a really good case. It is the surrounding weapons that work against him a little bit, though, for me. The Derick Henry component. And I don't know, man. I think the Ravens have a better receiving group than the Bills, like top to bottom. The Bills group is really good, but you got Zay, you've got Mark Andrews, you've got Isaiah Likely, you've got Derrick Henry. I just think his skill position talent is a little bit better. But like I said, I don't have an issue with if you're arguing someone other than these two guys.
I agree.
I sit there and
Get
I
out
go,
of here.
I don't know. But they're clearly playing the position better than anybody else. But that is my argument with Josh and why I'd give it to him more. I just think he's working with less. And if you remove both of these guys from their teams, I think the Bills would fall off a cliff. And I think the Ravens would be slightly below average. So that's my marginal difference maker. But I'm so proud of Lamar. It really hurts and pains me, Carson, when people try to knock him for the lack of playoff success, when people try to disparage his regular season MVPs, because he has been. I know the statistics weren't that crazy last year. Lamar dictated and controlled games at a different level that other players didn't. And also, though, you know, Derek's probably eating into a little bit of his raw production as well, too. I do think Henry enhances him, but Lamar's statistical case could be even more overwhelming if Henry wasn't here. Again, I think that is something that works against Lamar just because Derrick Henry is still such a monster. but it's an amazing campaign. And the leap that he is taking as a passer is remarkable. I mean, it's absurd. I really wondered if Lamar could ever reach this level as a pure passer. And he has, man. He's accurate. He takes care of the football. And he extends and creates plays that other quarterbacks can't dream of making. Lamar's having a phenomenal year. And if he ends up with his third MVP award, I think it will be deserved. And I've said this before, too. I think Lamar is a top 10 quarterback of all time. When we were talking about peak, the level that he has reached this season warrants enough. Like, if we were doing a peak for peak, guys that I want on my team, I get that it hasn't translated to playoff success yet. I would take Lamar ahead of Brett Favre. People may take issue with that. Lamar's better at protecting the football. He's more of an individual creator with his legs. Again, I think you could debate it peak to peak. I would take Lamar. Lamar has already reached that conversation to me. We are spoiled with the quarterback talent in the NFL today, man. I didn't know that if it could get better than Peyton and Ben and Brady and Breeze and all those guys. I don't know if we have the depth of that era, but we definitely have the top-tier guys with the Mahomes, with the Allen, with Lamar. They are both all-time quarterback talents, and I just want to hammer that home. Please don't use that to disparage a Josh or a Lamar. They're two of the greatest quarterbacks ever, and I just think it's important that we realize and appreciate that.
Absolutely. And this should have been the top 2 in MVP voting last year. I think that with what Josh did carrying that offense, I mean, the production was just absolutely ridiculous. People were way too preoccupied with the turnover numbers that year. And these two are unmatched in terms of being elite regular season offensive engines, right? Mahomes is not transforming the game in the regular season as a dual threat like these guys are. And although Josh hasn't been as insane as a runner this year, and again, hasn't been as insane with the volume production as a passer, it's really been the efficiency and eliminating those negative plays where he's been at his best, taking the checkdowns, just playing very efficient, controlled football. I do think in the second half of the year, we could see Josh's raw production unleashed because I think Amari Cooper is going to be a weapon in this offense, and we've just barely seen him. In the Titans game, he played fewer than half the snaps and still made a pronounced impact. Then he barely played the next week, and now he's out with a wrist injury he missed last week. But you get him out there, and that's where I start to really love this Bills receiving core because you're comparing it to the Ravens. You could have a conversation up to this point in the year about who's had the better receiving core. Once you inject Amari Cooper, though, with Shakir and with Kincaid and with Keon Coleman, that's when I think the Bills' receiving core is better. Now, Deontay Johnson will offset that to some extent. I just think Amari's better than Deontay. I think Amari's a good bit better than Deontay. But this is what these two dudes do, man. They're both super special. I do think Josh is already the second best quarterback ever to not have an MVP award, right? Drew Brees obviously has to be number one, but after that, it's Josh, and he's put together 5 straight MVP caliber seasons and has just narrowly gotten beaten out in every one of them. But I don't factor in voter fatigue, man. Even when it is my beloved Josh Allen, I don't think he has the best objective case right now. I think it's close. I think Lamar is doing some historic stuff. I'm going to give him the nod. I do think it's interesting, just real quick, where you go next. So would you have Herbert 3?
I'd have Jaden 3.
You'd have Jaden 3. I don't mind that case at all.
I know he misses the game, and I know that people will probably be disappointed with his touchdown production, but I mean, like, he's the guy getting them down the field, and Brian Robinson Jr. is punching it in, or McNichols is punching it in, right? It's those guys are getting a lot of goal line TDs, so the touchdowns may not blow you away, but he's got the highest completion percentage of any rookie quarterback ever. He's got the highest passer rating of any rookie quarterback ever. And we'll talk about a different award because I think that's Jaden's to lose.
Of course.
So remarkable at protecting the football. But, I mean, that's it, man. Like, he is continuing drives. He is making big-time plays. He's not making mistakes. He's one of the best rushing threats we've ever seen at the position. Like, I never thought, Carson, I never thought that we would have a rookie quarterback in remotely close to MVP talks. He is by far to me the most impressive rookie quarterback I've watched. And last year it was CJ Stroud, man. I just continue to be the progression, man, because it went, holy shit, Justin Herbert is already here. Right. Holy shit, CJ Stroud is already, holy shit, Jaden Daniels is a cut above them. I continue to be blown away by the performance of our rookie quarterbacks. And Jaden Daniels to me is atop of the heap. Would he be 3 for you, or would you go somewhere else?
He wouldn't quite be 3 for me. And the one thing that I do think is worth mentioning when we talk about the progression of the rookie quarterbacks, which is unquestionably amazing, right? What we've seen some of these dudes do in the past decade, which we haven't seen previously from rookie quarterbacks. Jaden is almost 24 years old, right? So he's not your typical rookie quarterback. He's a COVID era, semi-typical rookie quarterback, but this guy has a lot of football experience. I think I would go Joe Burrow 3. And I know that the Bengals are 4-5, but the way I look at it, your quarterback's responsible for the offensive side of the ball, and I think that Burrow's been awesome. Now, he doesn't have the record component, and he hasn't been quite as good as Josh or Lamar. I just think he's been a pretty clear QB3 this year, and had a rough week 1, but since then has been really awesome. I mean, he's 20 touchdowns to 4 picks on the year, over 2,200 yards, 7.4 yards per attempt, which isn't insane, but passer rating of 108. I think that he's really been phenomenal. Then I think I would go Justin Herbert. And the problem with Herbert is he just doesn't have the raw production, right? When you look at touchdown numbers, when you look at raw yardage, but he has been extremely efficient. He does not take negative plays. I mean, he has 1 interception all year. And in this Charger situation where he doesn't have a good line in front of him and he is one of the weakest receiving cores in football and he still has an inefficient run game and he doesn't have very good play calling, the dude is still playing his ass off out there. And the offensive results as a whole aren't great, which is why, again, I would take these other 3 guys above him, but he's doing that in really difficult circumstances.
Do you think the offensive line is that bad?
I think the interior of the offensive line is rough. I think the tackle spots are good. I think the
Alder,
interior is rough.
Awesome. Dude.
No, absolutely. I think that the tackle spots are great. I think the interior offensive line is rough. I should be more specific. But there's just not much good about this offense outside of Justin Herbert. And I think he probably still doesn't get enough credit for the level that he's playing at individually. Then I would go Jaden, because Jaden has been a hell of a one-man offense. And shout out to Kingsbury as well for drawing up a great offense. But you can't overstate how much Jaden has changed the Washington Commanders as an organization just halfway into his rookie year. And I will just reiterate, Patrick Mahomes does not belong in these conversations.
Not remotely close.
Just doesn't belong, dude. I mean, he's averaging 7.2 yards per pass attempt. He's got 11 touchdowns to 9 picks.
He's been Joe Ferguson this year, man. Hand the ball, hand the rock off.
Like, some of these turnovers are bad luck for him, although I will point out that even though Lamar and Josh both only have 2 interceptions, their picks have been unlucky. Keon Coleman just dropped what could have been a touchdown. Lamar had a pick that was right off a receiver's hands. Like, that argument doesn't hold total water with Mahomes, because he's still made clearly more bad decisions, more bad mistakes than those other dudes who are playing mistake-free football, basically. And he's not creating at that level, and he's not carrying the offense at that level. The Chiefs' offense has still been solid, and they've been amazing on third down, and Mahomes gets credit for that, and he's been really good the last 2 weeks. I just don't want to hear the 8-0 argument, because they're 8-0 mostly because they have the best defense in football, and that's not a luxury that Lamar or Josh have.
From last year, man.
Well, it's not quite that, because Brock had the production. He was just in a super boosted situation. We all know how great Mahomes is. That's not up for debate here. This just isn't his MVP season. It's about the level you're playing at individually, and Lamar and Josh are just head and shoulders above him right now, 9 weeks into the season. Let's move on, Logan, to Offensive Player of the Year. Who's your Offensive Player of the Year pick right now?
This guy, if he was in a different spot, probably would be on the short MVP list. And I would hear out this guy for MVP too. But the reality is it's a quarterback award. It's going to go to a quarterback every year. But it's Derick Henry. I thought Derick Henry wasn't washed whatsoever in the offseason. I was super ecstatic for the Ravens, even as a Steelers fan, right? Just the idea of Derick Henry and Lamar Jackson being paired up. And I've seen people finally, warming up to the idea that the Ravens are going to be a powerhouse and a problem to deal with. The Ravens were my AFC champion in the preseason. Why? Because they had Lamar Jackson and Derick Henry. Yeah, sure, I like the infrastructure of the rest of the roster. I like the defense a fair amount. But it was on the back of Lamar and Derick Henry. I think it's the greatest backfield in NFL history. I've said this a lot on this show. We have never seen the talent. You're pairing up 2 MVP caliber players. It's ridiculous. It really is. And What Derick is doing this year is unreal. Over 1,000 rushing yards already, 1,052, 13 total TDs, 11 of them rushing, 2 of them receiving, and he's averaging 6.3 yards per carry. It's the 4th most rushing yards per carry by a player post-merger. You got to go back to the Beady Feathers and Jim Brown era to find guys who have averaged more. And the only players post-merger to average more, Mercury Morris in 1973, who played 13 games. Jahmyr Gibbs, actually, this year, who's averaging 6.4. Shout out Jahmyr Gibbs. And Rashad Penny in 2021, who played 10 games. He's number 1 in rushing yards this year. He's number 1 in rushing touchdowns. And you gave the on-pace numbers for Lamar. Derrick Henry right now is on pace for 1,987 rushing yards, 24 touchdowns in what would be the most efficient rushing campaign of the 21st century. Those are MVP level numbers. And so that's another guy on the short list that if you wanted to make a Derrick Henry MVP case, I would hear you out. The only thing is that he's playing with a guy who I think has a better MVP case than Lamar Jackson. It's the only thing working against him, but it's insane. And like I said, I think Lamar enhances Derrick Henry, and I think Derrick Henry enhances Lamar Jackson. And that is one of the big reasons I picked Baltimore to come out of the AFC, because we've just never seen guys that take each other to another level by just being on the field together and what that does to defenses, picking your poison.
Yeah.
It truly stresses defenses in a way that we have never seen before in the NFL. So I guess the only counter argument I would hear is that they're playing with one another, but there hasn't been anybody else in the NFL this season that has played at this level offensively. Like, I think Justin Jefferson's a great player, but the production that we were getting out of Derrick Henry, I just don't think has been matched by any other player across the league. Like, dude, Derrick Henry in half a year has put up what some running backs do in an entire year, that some running backs don't do an entire year. So I think it's Derrick's award. I really hope that he eclipses 2,000 yards and becomes the first running back to have 2 2,000-yard campaigns, man. It would be utterly ridiculous, but Derrick still got the juice, and he's my offensive player of the year right now. The fact, Carson, that some people wanted to call this dude washed was ridiculous to me, man. I hope you guys are eating your words right now.
Derrick Henry is my offensive player of the year as well. I will say this is close for me. And it's close because of the other running back who joined a new team this offseason and has just completely exploded and made them so much more dynamic than they already were on that side of the ball, just elevating these really good offenses into being even better. And that's Saquon Barkley, man, who's actually averaging more scrimmage yards per game than Derrick Henry at 134 to Henry's 127, who's also averaging a ludicrous 5.9 yards per carry and who's averaging a touchdown a game. He's had a phenomenal campaign. I still think the production with Henry is just too overwhelming. And you look at some of the specific numbers, he's got 155 more yards after contact, still just impossible to bring down. And as much as he is helped in this offense, right, by the threat of Lamar as a rusher, that just tells you what a monster he still is, right? Harder to bring down than anybody else in football. He's got 11 more first downs. I do think there is just a little bit more of that consistency in a big spot. He's going to grind out the yardage that you need. And I think the touchdowns ultimately put him over the top. And I understand some people saying, how can you have the MVP and the Offensive Player of the Year on the same team, right? How is it possible that they're both individually that great? And my answer is just they've both been that great. Derrick Henry, Logan, you mentioned the numbers. He's on pace for over 2,200 yards from scrimmage and 25 total touchdowns. Rounded up, it's 25 that he's on pace for. 2,200 yards and 25 touchdowns. How do you deny that? You can't. As great as Saquon has been, this is historic stuff that we're seeing from Derrick Henry, so he is my choice. The only dude who I think even deserves a shout in this conversation next to these two, really, is Justin Jefferson, who's averaging 98 receiving yards per game, and I just think has been even more impactful than the stat sheet would indicate, and I think has been so vital to Darnold being as productive as he's been, and has been so vital to helping an otherwise shorthanded receiving core, right? No TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison was banged up, helping those other guys continue to get open and produce. Justin Jefferson, to me, is the best skill position player in the NFL today. He just doesn't have the individual monster statistical case that Henry and Saquon do this year. And I think that Henry's is ultimately the more historic and just the more overwhelming.
I agree. For some context, Carson, real quick trivia time. Who is the only NFL player to record 2,200 scrimmage yards and 25 plus TDs in a single season?
All right, I've got one guess. Well, actually, let me get a few, but my first thought is going to be Priest Holmes.
Oh, it's not Priest Holmes. That's a good guess.
Okay. Is it Marshall Faulk?
It's not Marshall Faulk.
Oh, my God. He must have been so close to those numbers. I mean, obviously, the rushing touchdowns makes you think LT. Is it LT?
It's LaDainian Tomlinson,
Okay.
man. Like,
Yeah.
come on, dude. When you're up there with that, like, pantheon of a season, man, like,
Yeah.
come on.
All right, I want to see how close my guesses were. Marshall Faulk had 2189 and 26 touchdowns. Come on now. It doesn't get closer than that. Priest Holmes is going to be ridiculously close to, I think, 2287 and 24 touchdowns.
Come
Followed
on,
the next
man.
year by 2110 and 27 touchdowns. So dare I say that was better than just getting LT off rip? Because those two have to be the closest to the club. And, of course, Derick Henry, who is just an absolute monster. Honestly, my favorite running back of all time. There's nobody who I've ever enjoyed watching more at the position, and it's been so great to see him in an actual NFL offense, as has been the case with Saquon. You know, both these guys have just been swimming upstream for years, and their efficiency hasn't been incredible, but the ability is still unequivocally there, and they're a cut above everybody else at the position right now until Christian McCaffrey comes back, of course. Let's go to the other side of the ball. Logan, Defensive Player of the Year. I think I have a feeling who you got.
Yeah, you guys can tune out if you've heard me give this one before. I said that joke earlier, you know, a shocker, the Steelers fan is giving a pro TJ Watt argument. Yeah, I am. 6.5 sacks, 4 fumbles forced, 2 fumble recoveries with 10 tackles for loss on the year for Mr. TJ Watt. He's tied 9th in sacks, and I think it's important that he's only played 8 games. Everyone above him has played 9 games except for Jonathan Grenard. And prepare yourself. Aiden Hutchinson. Yeah, Aiden Hutchinson, who played 5 games this year, man. I'm telling you, I talked all last year about Aiden Hutchinson and how great he was, how he led the league in pressures. Nobody was talking about it, right? He was way overshadowed by TJ and Myles Garrett. If Aiden Hutchinson doesn't lose a step after this injury, I'm telling you, man, I think this is his award to lose in the future. He's 4th in sacks right now with 7.5, and he's still number 2 in pressures with 27. And
this was his award. This was his award.
It was.
Just to give a little more credit, dude. He has a 35% pass rush win rate on the year. No other edge is over 27%. I mean, on a per snap, per game basis, he blew everybody else out of the water, and it sucks that he got hurt because this was his award 100%.
And it sucks the way he went out, right? But, I mean, and I get that his numbers are a bit juiced by that Buccaneers game, but, like, that isn't a historic game, right? He was in damn near Derek Thomas conversations, during that game. That's the trajectory that he was at. So, unfortunately, he's out. I really do think this was his award. But TJ is number 1 in forced fumbles, and I get that other guys have more sacks, right? The difference for me is the game-breaking and game-swinging plays and the timeliness of them. And that's what I've always said with TJ, right? Is his numbers are going to be near the top of the league, but the difference is when he makes these plays. He's the most disruptive player in the NFL. He's the biggest game wrecker in the NFL. You can't put one guy on him. You have to chip him at the line of scrimmage. You have to put 2 offensive linemen on, right? Whatever your strategy is, you have to game plan around TJ Watt when you play the Pittsburgh Steelers. Think about how the Atlanta game ended. Sack on Kirk Cousins. Think about how the Giants game ended. Sack on Daniel Jones. I get that you guys may be tired of this because I'm a Steelers fan, but he is one of the 2 best defensive players I have ever watched. It's him and Aaron Donald. If you want to expand it to 3 in this century, it would be him, his brother JJ, and it would be Aaron Donald.
Ray
he
Lewis?
has led the
Can we
league.
get Ray Lewis in that club?
Ray would be 4 for me.
Okay.
It's in its positional value.
Sure.
It's nothing against Ray. It's just that he plays linebacker instead of a D-line spot. Ray's a good shout. He's led the league in sacks his last 3 healthy seasons. He is the only player in NFL history to lead the league in sacks 3 times, and I will stand on this. He broke the single-season sack record. Obviously, that doesn't come into play for this season, but provide some historical context on how great he is. And I referenced this stat on Twitter. I can't read, so I misquoted this stat accidentally. The Steelers' winning percentage with TJ Watt is 67.9%. Without him, it's 9.1%. They are 1-10 without TJ Watt. And again, to provide some context for this stat, your MVP, Carson, Lamar Jackson. The Ravens' winning percentage with Lamar since he entered, not since he entered the league. This is actually since he became the full-time starter, so I excluded his rookie campaign. The Ravens have won with him 73.4% of the time. Without him, they win 30.8% of the time. That's ridiculous. Like, TJ is the Steelers' MVP, right? Like, just so far and away. And I think he's one of the 5 greatest defensive players in NFL history. I've watched enough of TJ. I am biased because I'm a Steelers fan, but I think he belongs there. Like Lawrence Taylor, Aaron Donald. I'm trying to think about old-time guys.
Merlin Olsen, Night Train Lane.
Sure. Whoever you want to put, I think TJ belongs in that fight. He's in my Mount Rushmore of greatest defensive. I would go, if I had to make the Mount Rushmore, it would be Lawrence Taylor, it would be Aaron Donald, it would be Derek Thomas, and it would be TJ
Paul
Watt.
Krause. Oh.
Sure. TJ's a monster,
Lombardi.
man. Anytime I can make the statistical case for TJ Watt, I'm obviously going to make it. There are some guys with other great cases, and the first guy that I'm going to give an honorable mention to is Myles Garrett. And I have to do it because he's the division rival to the guys that are always compared to one another. Who?
It's a beautiful gesture. It's an olive branch that you're extending right now.
A little bit. And the reason I do that is because when I give credence to the timely sacks and the game-swinging plays, Myles Garrett has had a bunch of those this year. The blocked kicks returned for TDs, right? The timely sacks. Myles Garrett is a monster. I think he's on the short list of guys that deserve an honorable mention here, but I got to give it to my guy TJ.
I've got no problem with TJ. He's my second choice for the award. As you say, he just makes the most big game-swinging plays. He's the clutchest defensive player that I've ever watched. 4 forced fumbles again this year already is crazy. He's got 31 since he entered the league, 7 more than anybody else, and he's wrecked several games this year. I'm going with Dexter Lawrence, Logan. I'm going with Sexy Dexy for this award, and this is really just about unprecedented, and I truly mean that, production at the position. This is a nose tackle who has 9 sacks this year, Logan. This is a guy whose job historically at his position is to eat up space, to clog up running lanes, right? Just to be massive in the middle of the defensive line. He gets double teamed 75% of the time, largely just because of the nature of his position, but also because of how great he is. And he has 9 sacks. He was leading the league before Trey Hendrickson went off this past week. Over the last 2 years, just coming into this year, he had 5 times as many pressures when lined up as a nose tackle than anybody else in football. 5 times as many pressures, Logan. And now he's second in the league in sacks, right? Just an absolute freak, 6'4", 340, long-ass arms. And just to continue to put that production into perspective, let's compare it to some of the great defensive tackles we've seen this century, Logan. We'll start with Casey Hampton, who, of course, you know very well, Steelers legend, one of the great nose tackles.
Sneck wasn't a pass rusher, though.
But that's my point. No nose tackles are. Well, Dexter Lawrence is also a monster run stuffer. So that's what I'm trying to contextualize.
I think Casey Hampton has 11 career sacks or something like that?
9 career sacks. Dexter Lawrence has 9 this season. Vince Wilfork had 16 career sacks. And what you started to say there is the exact point, right? Nose tackle is not a pass rushing position. Dexter Lawrence has made it that. He has made it that while still excelling at the run stuffing part of the game. We've never seen anything like it. And I just can't deny that sort of complete dominance at the position. And frankly, I just love the Giants' defensive line and their ability to rush the passer. I think they've been awesome to watch collectively, but this is a truly historic, unprecedented, dominant season from Dexter Lawrence, and I don't want it to get overshadowed. Again, I have no problem with TJ, but if you just look at the gap between guys at their position, I mean, what Dexter Lawrence is doing compared to what every other nose tackle in football is doing, and what every other nose tackle in football history has done as a pass rusher, it's unrivaled.
I mean, it's like him, Aaron Donald, John Randall, And the interesting thing about like guys like Aaron Donald and John Randall is like it makes sense that they'd be better at rushing the quarterback. Those are smaller guys. They told John
Yeah.
Randall when he was coming up that he could never make it as a defensive tackle because he was just too small. Randall's like 270 to 290 in his playing days. Aaron Donald was, always 280 to 290. And it just makes sense, right? They're a little more agile. They can get in the backfield quicker.
Right.
I
And he's
like
not
the
a
shout,
nose
man.
tackle. Donald was a
Yeah.
3-tech, right? So he's not a 340-pound man
Mm-hmm.
like Dexter Lawrence, where you've just never seen pass rushing like that. You've seen great pass rushers from the interior. You mentioned a couple of them, but not nose tackles specifically.
Yeah, and even when you look across the league, right, like I think that Chris Jones is probably the next best defensive tackle in football. And he's great in the run game, right? He blows that up. He's still not producing at that level. Quentin Williams is a monster, right? But even it's really hard to do this at the nose tackle. When you mentioned the double team rate, it's absurd. I like the shout, man. I got no issue with this pick. He's had a great season. And the Giants' defensive front, I applaud them for not just going into a full rebuild when you have Daniel Jones as your QB, but Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau flanking him, they're loaded there.
Monsters. Yeah, shout out to Chris Jones. I mean, I think an absolute monster, but again, not a nose. Like, it is a different position. It's worth pointing out if you're just comparing him to other great DTs. He's a nose tackle. You don't see this from nose tackle. So he's my pick. Offensive Rookie of the Year, Logan. I think this one is pretty simple, pretty straightforward, but who you got?
Yeah, there's been some great rookies this year, and I'll give them honorable mentions here in a minute, but it's Jaden Daniels, 13 touchdowns to 2 turnovers, 2,400 plus total yards, with a completion percentage 71.5%. It's the highest completion percentage ever by a rookie quarterback. It's the highest passer rating ever by a rookie quarterback, and I'll reiterate it from what I said earlier. It's the greatest rookie QB campaign ever. I couldn't say it enough times last year when C.J. Stroud was coming up. Couldn't believe it at the time, how remarkably efficient he was at controlling the football. But it's like Jaden Daniels is almost a one-man offense as a rookie. It's not just the ability to avoid negative plays, not taking sacks, not turning the ball over. It's the ability to turn those negative plays where you're hemmed up into positive plays with his elite playmaking as a rookie. It's unbelievable stuff. Again, when we're going through the greats, man, he's winning too, right? Because people always want to point to the winning rookie quarterbacks, right? We go, Big Ben, man, look at what Big Ben did. We go, Dak Prescott and Mac Jones. And it's like, dude, those guys were managing games. And don't get me wrong, Big Ben made big throws when they needed. He's undefeated as a starter as a rookie, right? Dak Prescott made some big throws, but they weren't the engines of their offense. And that's what I want to just emphasize when we're talking about how historic Jaden's rookie campaign is he is the engine of the offense as a rookie. He is the reason the offense is great. He is the reason they are scoring points, and he's the reason they're winning games with good skill position talent, but not like overwhelming skill position talent.
No.
The lineage is crazy because we went Andrew Luck takes the 2-win Colts to first place in the AFC South, and they get to the playoffs. Crazy stuff. Justin Herbert breaks the TD record. C.J. Stroud leads the Texans from worst to first and wins a playoff game. Jaden has taken the standard and moved the needle. He has moved the goalposts up a notch. He's a complete offensive engine. He is winning football games. He's a total package. I do want to give an honorable mention to Joe Alt. I don't think I don't think an offensive lineman could ever win Rookie of the Year, but if there was going to be a year to do it, if Jaden didn't exist, I do think Joe Alt. That kid has been unreal. He was one of my favorite offensive line prospects ever. I loved him at Notre Dame. I thought he was going to be a stud. He is a stud. And shout out Malik Neighbors. Malik Neighbors is awesome too. In a lot of other years, Malik Neighbors would be a shoo-in to win this award. But Jaden's running away with it.
I think that I know your answer on this. I mean, sort of by default based on the other names that you've put Jaden above. But best Washington rookie quarterback season, Jaden or RG3? Because RG3 is crazy. The craziest stat about RG3, Logan, is that he led the league in passing yards per attempt, and he led the league in rushing yards per attempt. Unbelievable efficiency.
Yeah, RG3
and he also got them to the playoffs.
Yeah, RG3 was absurd. I just think there's a different level of polish when it comes to... I don't think Jaden was as great of a scrambler, even though he's great, as RG3 was as a rookie, but I think that's surpassed by how great Jaden is as a passer. I don't ever think RG3 was like a like a surgical quarterback, right? He
I
could
agree.
make plays, but not to this level, man. Jaden's something special.
I agree. I think that the gap between them as passers is real, even though RG3 was super efficient. Jaden's been ridiculously efficient this year. He's third in completion percentage, fourth in passing yards per attempt. All the while, he's second in quarterback rushing yards behind just Lamar Jackson with 4 rushing touchdowns, and he is leading the offense that is still number 1 in the league in both yards and points per drive. It's just unbelievable, and you couldn't have expected it looking at this roster, right? The skill position talent is frankly middling. I mean, I love Terry McLaurin. I thought that Noah Brown was an incredible pickup. The fact that the Texans just cut him to me was crazy. But Jaden is really, really elevating this group, and they're fourth on third down. They're perfect on fourth down. Like, that sort of situational excellence from a rookie quarterback is just absurd. I don't think it's a conversation. Malik Neighbors is a monster. Putting up 80 yards per game with Daniel Jones as your quarterback is nuts. I want to give him a bunch of credit for that. But when you have a rookie quarterback, the most valuable position, changing everything for a team like this, you just can't deny it. How about the other side of the ball, Logan? Defensive Rookie of the Year. Interesting conversation because we've never seen a draft class go longer before a defensive player's name was called. Who do you have here?
I've got, and I do think it's an interesting race. There's been some good ones here. I've got Quinion Mitchell of the Eagles as my defensive rookie of the year. This season, he's allowing an opposing passer rating of 72.8. He's allowing a completion percentage of just 51.4% among qualified players. That's 28th in the NFL. He's allowed 248 total yards and 0 touchdowns. Specifically, the last 4 games, he's only been targeted 15 times. He's only allowed 8 catches for 73 yards on a per-game basis. That's under 20 yards per game with 2 catches a game. I mean, guys aren't even throwing the ball his way, and I thought it was a little bit of an adjustment period. When he came in, I thought the first game against Green Bay was a little rough, but it's like it's a rookie corner playing his first snaps. You know what I mean? It's going to take a little bit of an adjustment period. And yeah, I just think it's hard to dominate at that position, man. I mean, he's getting lined up against the opposing team's best wideouts, and he's winning. Like, he's been super impressive, and it's such a tough position. The other 2 guys, I know you shouted him out very early on in the season, Kamari Lassiter. One of the Browns picks that they sent in the Deshaun Watson trade, unfortunately, was Kamari. He ends up in Houston. He's also allowing an opposing passer rating of 72.8, the exact same mark as Mitchell, a 42.9% completion percentage. That ranks 5th in all of the NFL with less yards, 234 total ones. But he has allowed 2 touchdowns, and he is playing safety. I think safety is just a little bit easier to play than straight-up corner. But Lassiter has been phenomenal, as had Jared Verse. Verse has 22 pressures. That's 9th in the NFL right now. I don't think the sacks reflect how great he's been as a pass rusher and a run stuffer. So 3 really good rookies, but I think Mitchell has been doing it at the toughest position. And I also think, I don't know if this should factor into my argument or not, but the fact that the Eagles really needed a corner to step up has factored into me. Like, the Eagles really needed a guy that could step up and be the number 1, and I think Mitchell's been that. So I think you could take this award a lot of different directions, but I'm going to give it to Mitchell.
I do want to be clear on the Lassiter point. He is playing corner, and he is having a good season, but I think it's Jared Verse. I think that it's actually pretty clear. I don't know. It's interesting that you went with Mitchell. Verse has just been a hell of an impactful pass rusher. He's 8th in the NFL in pressures, has 9 tackles for loss, 13 quarterback hits, 3.5 sacks, which isn't a crazy number, but you see all the other pressure numbers are really impressive. And he's been great against the run. I think that he has been a hugely impactful guy for a Rams defense that really needed him to be, because obviously they lost a lot of talent this offseason and they didn't have a ton of talent to start with. And that's a unit that is trending in the right direction. And I think that Verse has been their best player. I think that he's been really awesome. And he is my defensive rookie of the year, I would say, by a pretty good margin. Enough about these players, though, Logan. Who's your coach of the year?
I'm going to give it to the backwards cap king, Dan Quinn, man.
No, you're not allowed to do that, Logan. I'm sorry, company policy. You're not allowed.
I do think it is pretty funny looking on the sideline, man, though. But Dan Quinn did the impossible. He turned around an entire organization in one offseason. Like, it's so funny to me, Carson, the way this coincided with the exit of Dan Snyder. Like, I guess, like, not that you could see this big of a turnaround. I found a crazy stat yesterday, Carson. The Commanders, I guess the Washington football team, they never won more than 10 games in the Dan Snyder era. They reached 10 in 3 seasons, 1999, 2005, and 2012. Never won more than 10 games. And in Dan Quinn's first year under the Josh Harris regime, they're going to do it in the first year. It's so ironic. It's so poetic to me. You get rid of that devil and boom, Commanders are back. I'm so happy for Commanders fans. They've been miserable. They play in a shitty stadium. They have had shitty football to watch with the worst owner in the NFL. One of, if not the. I think Tepper's pretty bad too, but Snyder's the worst. And it's not just Dan Quinn, right? I want to give Dan Quinn credit, and he is the face of the operation, which is why I give him this award. And this is an expectations-based award to me. It's who overachieved the most from the regular season, right? I picked Dan Campbell in the regular season because I thought the Lions would have a dominant regular season, and they have. And I think he's probably on the short list of guys that could be up for consideration. But expectations, I thought the Commanders were going to be at the cellar of the NFC East with the Giants. I had them winning 6 games this year. They've already surpassed that. So there are some other things that I think have played into Washington's ascension this year. I think the hiring of Cliff Kingsbury as an offensive coordinator with Jaden Daniels has been huge. I think the addition of the stable veterans in this organization, Austin Eckler, Zach Ertz, Bobby Wagner, Dorrance Armstrong, the offensive line additions, Allegretti, Biadasz, the defensive additions, specifically from the Panthers, adding Luvu and Chin. They just traded for Marshawn Lattimore, right? They're trying to be competitive even more. But Washington's going to make the playoffs. It looks like they're going to win 10-plus games, and they're going to exercise those Dan Snyder demons in year one. Again, it's an expectations-based award. I thought that the Commanders were going to be bad this year. The fact that they've done it in one season, I think warrants him winning this award. Dan Quinn's a really damn good coach. On my short list, Dan Campbell, Kevin O'Connell, I think deserves a shout, but I thought the Commanders were going to suck straight up. So Dan Quinn has earned this award to me.
Yeah, this is kind of a classic path to the Coach of the Year award, right? You step in. We saw DeMeco Ryans just make this case last year where he takes basically the worst team in football, but also gets a franchise-changing rookie quarterback, and then all of a sudden you're in the playoffs. The thing is, yes, Washington has overachieved the most, but I just give Cliff Kingsbury a lot more credit for that if we're looking at the coaching staff. I think he's been easily the best coach on that team with the offense that he's designed, which has been so intuitive to Jaden and consistently put him in positions to succeed, right? Put him in second and short, third and short, where they can keep these drives alive. I think that there's a coach whose team has also dramatically overachieved my preseason expectations, but who I think is just a better coach than Dan Quinn and is more directly responsible for his team's success. Like Washington, their defense still sucks, and Dan Quinn is ultimately a defensive guy. They're 30th in yards per drive allowed. They're 27th in points per drive allowed, and they don't have talent, but they've still been one of the worst defenses in football overall. I'm going to give this to Kevin O'Connell. And this is another spot where you have to give a ton of credit to a coordinator. Brian Flores has been unbelievable defensively, but I also think that KOC has been brilliant offensively. And the preseason win total over-under for Minnesota, Logan, was 6.5. I had the over, but not by much. I had them winning 7 games, and they're already sitting at 6-2 and have established themselves as an undeniable contender. I really think that KOC has made the most out of Sam Darnold and out of this offense. Props to Darnold for maturing and becoming a smarter, more poised quarterback, but there's not a lot of offenses around the league in which he is succeeding and thriving like this. He has a great play caller. He has a great offensive system in place, and even at times shorthanded, right? They just got TJ Hawkinson back. Jordan Addison missed a couple games. KOC is finding ways to get your second and third string tight ends involved, right? It's been the Johnny Munt and Josh Oliver show for a lot of this year, and they've been productive. And through all this, right, having Sam Darnold at quarterback, a major question mark coming into the year, having some injuries to your key weapons, they've produced really good offense through it all. And Sam Darnold is averaging 8.5 yards per pass attempt. He deserves credit for that, but I think KOC and Justin Jefferson really are the two guys who had Sam Darnold in MVP talks early this year, which he never belonged in, but he was in those talks nonetheless. They're extremely well prepared. They consistently jump out to strong starts, and they're one of the few teams in the league that hasn't gotten embarrassed all year, right? I mean, they've lost two highly competitive games to two really good teams. Detroit obviously is a juggernaut, and that game went down to the last play. The Rams, I understand, don't have the best record, but they've been playing great football as of late, and that was another really competitive game. So they're just making the most out of their talent. And compared to my preseason expectations, they're the most impressive team. Washington has overachieved a ton, but I still have red flags about them as a football team, whereas I look at Minnesota and I go, they're as complete as anybody out there, and they're a legitimate Super Bowl contender. I can't say that about Washington, and I think Kevin O'Connell is a big component in that equation.
The only thing I would push back is that I would say the Vikings' strength of their team is the defense, and I would directly attribute that more to Brian Flores, but
sure,
it sucks. We don't do a Coordinator of the Year award. I think that would be awesome. I mean, I think like Ben Johnson.
Well, I
Brian
think there is
Flores.
actually an Assistant Coach of the Year award. It's just nobody talks about it.
Okay, well, whoever wins that, shout out to you. You guys will be well deserved. I think Flores
Let's
is on
see.
that short list.
Did Ben Johnson get it last year? God, I hope
let's see
he
who
did.
got that. I did want to give an honorable mention to a few other coaches that aren't going to be in consideration, I don't think, for this award. Who
Jim
got
Schwartz got it last year, which is a pretty good call.
Yeah.
I mean, that defense was amazing. But
One
I
of the
still
best in
would have
the
probably
league.
gone Ben Johnson.
The honorable mentions, I also want to shout out. I want to give a shout out to Jim Harbaugh for the work he's done with the Chargers. I just think it was a directionless organization before he came in.
Yeah.
I think he's established an identity with that group. Again, I don't think the Chargers are going to win enough games for him to win this award. And the other guy, I always sing his praises. I want to shout out Mike Tomlin. I want to shout out Coach T, man. There was a lot of noise coming into this year about the Steelers, about how they were going to drastically underachieve. This was the year that we're going to bottom out. I get it, man. Everybody makes that same spiel in the offseason because they're bored and they want to make the anti-Tomlin, anti-Steelers take because it's low-hanging fruit, man. It is what it is. You know what I mean? It's next offseason after the Steelers get bounced in the wild card round this year, it'll be the exact same conversation, same old Steelers. But Mike Tomlin, you talked about the Vikings be a team that have not been embarrassed this year. The Steelers have not gotten embarrassed this year. Their losses have been both really close games. I mean, the Cowboys when it came down to the final play of the game. And also, the final component, I think, of Tomlin's Coach of the Year case, I don't think he has a legitimate shot of winning it, but that's one of the ballsiest football decisions I've ever seen in season, to make that change from Justin Fields to Russell Wilson and to be confident in it. If I was head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, which thankfully I'm not, I would blow a blood vessel in my head and I think I'd have a heart attack. But I couldn't have done that. With the way that Justin Fields is playing, I could not have pulled him. That was, again, one of the ballsiest decisions I've ever seen from a head coach. And the way that it has paid off to this extent, it has paid off. So I just want to give him extra props for that. So shout out Coach T, man.
I'm a huge Tomlin guy, dude. I never understand when the fire Tomlin talks start up. I mean, he is just consistently overachieving year after year, and I get that, like, you're not contending, but look at the talent that he has on his roster that he is finding a way to consistently win 10 games with. It's so impressive, and this is the best Steelers team that we've seen in some time, and you're right on the Russ decision. I mean, I still want to see more of a sample size, but Russ has been really good through 2 weeks, and I thought that it was a bad decision to go to him as the starter. So that's a good shout. I'll give one more shout here because I actually think this is a really interesting award this year. Matt LaFleur, who's not going to really have a great shot at this award because preseason expectations for the Packers were already high. I just continue to gain more appreciation for his brilliance as a play caller and his ability to design an offense in which Malik Willis could step in and thrive. And they're effectively 3-0 with Malik Willis. They're 2-0 in games he started, and he had to finish basically half the game the other week. I think that LaFleur has been incredibly impressive. I think he is one of the key components in the Packers being such a good football team. Those are all the names who came to mind for me, though, and I think that you had a couple good shouts there. Last award, Logan, and then we're going to run through our power rankings real quick, as we do every other week. Comeback Player of the Year. Who you got?
Preseason, I had Aaron Rodgers, and I thought this was like basically free money. I'm really surprised that Rodgers has been, I don't know, this poor, this unproductive. Like, it's tough coming off of that injury at such an old age, but I don't know. I feel like he's even underwhelmed my expectations, and he'll have a much better second half of the year. I mean, he's got Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson. They'll figure out how to get those guys the ball.
And he's had a good last couple weeks.
For sure. But I think expectations come into play here, and the guy that has exceeded my expectations has been Sam Darnold. I counted Sam Darnold out. I thought he was going to hold the Vikings back. I thought he was going to be the reason this team couldn't win football games, and it has been the opposite. Don't get me wrong. I'd like to see Darnold cut down on the turnovers. He's got 10 of them now on the season, but with that, he's got 17 touchdowns. He's got 2,120 total yards. He has a completion percentage just south of 70%. And he has a passer rating of 107.8. I wrote him off. Sam Darnold didn't write back. I do think he's in a good offensive situation, but that doesn't have any bearing on this award to me, right? I think that, sure, he's in a good offensive situation, but so are other guys, right? I don't think Rodgers is in a great one, but he's got his two best friends, Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson, right? So, like, he's in an exceptional situation. I think other guys are in good situations, but I didn't think Darnold could captain a ship to this level, and he has, man. I've been really impressed with Sam. Like, he hasn't gone above and beyond, but he hasn't screwed it up, man. Sam Darnold has been steering the boat, and that deserves something. He's exceeded all my expectations for him this year already midway through. So, I'm going to give it to Sam Darnold, man. He has played way better than I anticipated.
Very good choice. Darnold for sure makes a case. This is just kind of about philosophically, what do you value more with Comeback Player of the Year? Is it the guy who's never really been that good who suddenly is good? Or is it maybe a player coming off of a major injury? And I actually think that I don't necessarily just inherently side with either one. I think that it kind of depends on the specifics of the case. This year, I'm going to go with Kirk Cousins. And it's not just the major injury there, it's the age too, right? He's 36. He tore his Achilles midway through last season. He joined a new team, a team that has been extremely frustrating in recent years for underachieving the level of talent they have offensively. And he's balling out, dude. He's 4th in the league in passing yards. He's 9th in passer rating, super efficient and producing with real high volume. And frankly, he just has the biggest nuts in the pocket of anybody in the league, right? I mean, he can't move around in there. And although the Falcons line is good, like sometimes those pockets are just going to collapse around him and he doesn't care. He has massive balls, is hanging in there, making big time throws, and he's leading a team to the playoffs. So if you were to compare him versus Rodgers, I mean, they have more similarities, right? They're both old guys coming off major injuries. I just think that Kirk has been better. I don't think Rodgers has been bad. I don't think he's the problem in New York, but Kirk has been better, and Kirk is leading a team to possibly exceed its expectations or at least live up to them, whereas with Rodgers, the Jets as a whole have obviously underwhelmed. So I'm going to give it to Kirk O'Chains, Logan. He's my Comeback Player of the Year.
I think that's in good spirit, man. You know, I thought DeMar should have won it last year, or Baker should have won it last year, just considering circumstances. Like, I don't know, Flacco had a cool 5 games. DeMar Hamlin freaking died and came back to life, and everybody counted Baker Mayfield out. But
it's a silly award because you never really know what the criteria is. It's Kirk's weird. It's my least favorite award.
Kirk's a good pull, though. I mean, he definitely has overcome more, right? Sam Darnold went from a backup to a good starter. Kirk went from potentially a career-ending injury to playing great football here in Atlanta. So I like that pick.
Yeah. I mean, a couple years ago, right, Geno had the resurgence case, but I also think Geno was doing more of a carry job than Darnold is. I mean, when you compare circumstances, Geno was in significantly rougher circumstances and still playing better. in my opinion. So I'll give it to the old guy. The Emirates NBA Cup is here. You can win big getting in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA.
All 30 teams split into 6 groups every Tuesday and Friday, playing for the right to advance in the single elimination in-season tourney, culminating in the NBA Cup Championship in Vegas. First time, here's something special just for you. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins.
Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook. Every point counts. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code NERDS. That's code NERDS for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Let's do our power rankings, Logan. And as always, we'll go 10 teams deep. We'll start from the top. Who's the number 1 team in football to you?
Number 1, I still have the Kansas City Chiefs. They are number 1 until further notice, until they drop a game. And in a lot of ways, the Kansas City Chiefs have not separated themselves from the pack, but they have gotten better from from weeks previous when we've done these rankings. Mahomes is finding Kelsey. Mahomes found DeAndre Hopkins, and the offense looked live finally, right? He hit on a deep shot to D-Hop. They were really effective in the red zone. They're still running the ball at a really high level, and the defense has been clamps. So I've said it every week this season. Chiefs are number 1 until further notice.
All right, Logan, maybe you're going to call me crazy. For the second time this year, I'm going to move the Chiefs down to my number 2 spot. And I hinted at this on our Sunday show. I'm going to have the Detroit Lions number 1. This is extremely close for me. It terrifies me not having the Chiefs in the number 1 spot because you just look at their situational execution and it's absurd. They're converting more than 53% of their third downs, right? Like, it's not jaw-dropping offensively, but they just keep drives moving and they put up enough points, and then they do have the best defense in football, in my opinion, and they have the best quarterback in football. I'm going to go with the Lions for now. They are just blowing teams out, right? And that's not something that the Chiefs have done. I don't think that's something the Chiefs are capable of doing right now. They have the best offense in football, in my opinion. Their trench dominance, their skill position talent, the level that Goff is playing at, it's overwhelming. And the reason that I'm comfortable moving them up to number 1 is because of the Zadarius Smith trade. He is obviously not going to replicate what Aiden Hutchinson did, but he is a legitimate high-end pass rusher. And that's the one thing that's been missing from this Detroit Lions defense, because we know how good they are up front outside of that. We know how good they are against the run. We've seen their safeties excelling. And I just think this is a really, really complete football team right now that's basically answered the questions I've had about them. And I'm going to give them the edge. Dude, I see that you're upset. I don't blame you for being upset. But
I'm kind of shocked.
I can see that you're shocked. Detroit's been the most impressive team. We can agree on that?
I mean, if we were ranking teams on impressiveness, I'd probably have the Ravens above the Chiefs too. Like, just in like terms of dominance.
Well, the Ravens have some bad losses, though. I mean, the Ravens lost to the Raiders and the Browns. Those are 2 of the worst teams in football.
Yeah, but I mean, they've been blowing teams out too. That's I don't hate it. Like, in a lot of ways, Detroit has answered some questions about their shortcomings. I like what I've seen from the secondary. Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph have been awesome. The addition of Zadarius Smith now fills their biggest hole. They are elite in the trenches. They have, in my opinion, the second best offense in football, only behind Baltimore. So don't get me wrong. Yeah. I'm pro Detroit. I am as pro Detroit as they come. They were my preseason Super Bowl pick, and I'm sticking to it. But number 1, it's ballsy, Carson. I'll give you that, man. I like it.
Yeah. Listen, I think that the defense have improved enough to where I'm in. And I know that their efficiency numbers stopping the run aren't what they were last year at all, but also it's like teams just aren't really running the ball on them a lot. And I think with their personnel, this was an elite run defense last year. I think we should still expect it to be a good one. And they've really improved against the pass. They're top 5 in points allowed per drive now, Logan. They're the number 1 third down defense in football. They're the number 6 fourth down defense. They're the number 4 red zone defense.
About Detroit. Situationally, they have been excellent.
They've been excellent situationally. And offensively, they're excellent situationally. So, listen, I'm not going to say a single word about you having the Chiefs at number 1. I just think the Lions are a little more talented, and the Lions are more capable of dominating football games. But that defense quarterback component with Kansas City, I don't know. If it came down to it, gun to my head this year, right now, had to pick between these two games in a single game format, I'm not going to make myself answer that, but it would still be really hard to pick against the Kansas City Chiefs.
I like it. I like you thinking out of the box a little bit, man.
Please don't put a gun to my head and make me answer it.
I'm not. I don't have the tool on me right now. Maybe
Thank
next
God.
episode.
Please no.
At number 2, I have the Baltimore Ravens. I am standing pat.
Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, I've been on the Ravens. Lamar and Derick Henry are the greatest backfield in NFL history. I think they are utterly unstoppable when they are clicking. Lamar has unlocked this entire offense with his growth as a passer. They are now really, really talented at skill positions. If Rashad Bateman could catch a ball, they'd be in a different tier. Andrews, Likely, Zay Flowers, now Deontay Johnson. It's absurd, man. And the one thing is the pass defense, and that's where I am worried about Baltimore. That's the one box that they need to check in the second half of the season. They've been dead last against the pass. They're number 1 against the rush. They're dead last against the pass. They have to figure that out, and I thought they got bailed out last week, man. I think they had some busted coverage, and I don't think they made them pay for it. So Baltimore's susceptible. Don't get me wrong. Baltimore has a flaw that Detroit doesn't. That was Detroit's fatal flaw last year, right? That's why I said, they got the Rams. They got the Buccaneers. Maybe we should be a little worried. Right. I thought they were better teams, and in the moment, I did pick them to win those games individually, but I thought that could be something that comes back to bite them. That's Baltimore's fatal flaw, and they've got to figure it out in the second half of the season, but the offense is so overwhelming to me. Again, it's the greatest backfield in NFL history. It is 2 Hall of Famers at quarterback and running back. It is 2 of the top 10 players ever at their position at quarterback and running back. That's why they're number 2 to me.
I still have the Ravens in the top 5, but I do actually have them at number 5. I think it's a top 2 offense in football. I still prefer Detroit's. I think Detroit's offense is just insane, and it's so routine, right? It's just such brutally consistent excellence from them. I just need to see more out of the Baltimore defense, man. I mean, I've given them the benefit of the doubt largely this year, but now we're getting to a place where I'm concerned, right? When the results still aren't improving. Yes, they're great against the run, but they're awful against the pass, and the pass rush isn't what it needs to be, and the secondary has had more breakdowns than we're used to and has underachieved as a group. They're 23rd in points allowed per drive, man. I just need to see more out of that defense, and then I can move them back up. And I still think the talent is there on the defense, but I compare them to another team in the AFC, Logan, and I guess I'll just kind of jump all around in my rankings. But I trust the Bills' defense more, especially when they have Matt Milano out on the field. I think that they're better coached right now. I think that that's a more complete defensive unit, and the Ravens just have a couple of these lapses, right? And you think, well, how do you lose a game to the Raiders? How do you lose a game to the Browns? And it's like, well, they can't stop these bad offenses down the stretch, and every game has to be a track meet for them, and that's not the case for my numbers 3 and 4 teams. So until I see improvement from Baltimore there, I think this is an appropriate spot to have them. Still at number 3, Logan, I don't think you're going to have this team as high as I do for sure. I don't know if you'll have them in your top 5. I still have Minnesota, and the reason is pretty simple. I think they're a ridiculously complete team. I think that defense is excellent, right? I think it's a complete defense at every level, and we know how effective they are in terms of their pass rush, bringing the blitz. Offensively, yes, I'm a little worried about Darnold and his potential to cough up that big turnover that you can't afford in a big game, but overall, I think he's pretty good in this role, and it's a balanced offense, and the skill position talent is really good, and the line has been good, and the play calling is very good. I think they're more complete than Baltimore, for example, so I'm going to keep them here. I think Minnesota is really good, and I know that they've lost a couple games now, but I think they're an elite football team.
I think they're an elite football team, too. I just think that the Ravens' overwhelming talent in the backfield, I just trust Lamar and Derick, so it's so stupid. It's such a stupid pairing of elite talent in NFL history. So no, I have the Vikings at number 4. They're my next team in my top 5. I have been meaningfully moved by the Vikings, and a lot of people were clowning me for giving the Vikings props after they beat the Indianapolis Colts. First of all, the Colts are a good football team. That's a good win for the Vikings, right? Second of all, I just wanted to see it extended. And sure, I wasn't as fired up, and I wasn't as quick to the Minnesota party as everybody else was. I was incremental in moving them up, but I just wanted to see them prove themselves over the early stretch of the season. And now that we have a large sample size, half of a year, I know what the Vikings are, or at least I think I know what the Vikings are. It's an elite defense. It's a really good offense. They're really well coached. And the only thing holding them back is Sam Darnold. And Darnold's not that bad. Darnold's a good quarterback. Like, am I scared about him and his performance individually more than any other team in my top 5? Yes, wholeheartedly. Like, when you're looking at Josh Allen and Jared Goff and Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, sure, Sam Darnold is the odd man out of that group, but I still like Darnold, and the offense is really talented around him where they can pick up the slack. His job isn't that hard. Get the ball to Aaron Jones in the flat. Get the ball to the best receiver in football. Get the ball to Hawkinson, to Addison. I really like the Vikings. I've been moved. Again, I'm sorry that it took me 8 weeks to finally warm up and you know, give them the credence that they've deserved, but they are that good, and it's on the back of that defense. So I've got the Vikings in my top 5. They're in my 4 spot.
And you had Detroit at 3?
Correct.
Okay, so I have in my 4 spot the Buffalo Bills. I think that this is a great football team. They once again find themselves second in the league in point differential, Logan. I mean, just incredible, the regular season results that we've seen year after year. I think that the offense is elite. I think it's going to be a top 3 offense in football once Amari Cooper is fully integrated. I mean, they're already 4th in scoring, so they're obviously not far off. They're actually already 3rd in points per drive, so you can say they're already a top 3 offense because it's the most balanced group that we've seen with how well James Cook and Ray Davis both are running the ball. And like I said, they don't turn the ball over. Josh isn't making mistakes, and you know that in big moments, he still makes special stuff happen. Like we saw, you mentioned with the Quentin Morris touchdown. Like, that's just ridiculous stuff. They're amazing in the red zone always. They're 9 of 9 on 4th down this year. They haven't been as great on 3rd down as we're used to, but like, they're normally the number 1 3rd down offense in football. I still trust them a lot in those situations. And I think it's an incredibly sustainable formula that they have right now. It doesn't require insane heroics from Josh. It just requires him continuing to play this super controlled, efficient football. And then when you need it, he's got that special play for you. Defensively, my red flag is still the run defense. Bills have to get better against the run. And if we were comparing them to Baltimore in a head-to-head matchup, right, I might still pick Baltimore. I mean, Baltimore ran the ball down the Bills' throat. Now, they were down Taron Johnson and Matt Milano and Terrell Bernard in that game, so it wasn't their full-strength run defense, but I still don't think it's a good run defense at full strength. However, in a vacuum, I do think the Bills are the more complete team. I think that even though the Ravens blew them out, there's a reason that the Bills don't have a loss to a bad team on their resume, whereas the Ravens have too, and it's because their formula is more consistent. And I'm excited to see the Bills tested against some more really good teams in the upcoming weeks, right? They got the Chiefs, they got the Niners, they got the Lions. I'm looking forward to seeing some of those games because they've very much been taking care of business against some of the mediocre teams that they're facing this year, but their ceiling is going to be determined by how well can they defend against some of these great teams and how well do they coach. Can Tyler Bass continue to make field goals? That's what we'll see. But I feel very good about the Bills right now.
Yeah, the Bills are in my 5 spot, so we have all the same teams, and they're just in a little bit of a different order. Mm-hmm. I trust Josh Allen. To me, it is about the run defense. It's also about, can this team consistently get pressure? You know, I trust. Sure. I know what the Chiefs are going to do defensively. I know what the Lions are going to do. The Bills, sometimes they have a crazy pass rush, and then other games it's middling. But the Bills are a great team. I think they got underrated this season, man.
And they have talent at every level, right?
For
and
sure.
Milano will get back out there. The corners are amazing. The defensive line is good overall, but they do have their matchups in which they get bullied. The linebacking core with Bernard and Milano should be great. Like, they have their issues, but they don't really have holes in the same way that some of these other teams do. So I think they're a top 5 team in football. My number 6 is the Green Bay Packers, and they had a really ugly performance last week against the Lions. I'm just not moved off of them. I get that Jordan Love had some horrible moments last week. It's not a big deal to me. He has to take better care of the football, but I think that this is another one of the league's truly elite offenses with how well they run the ball, with how balanced and complete their receiving core is, and with Jordan Love playing at a top 10 level and with Matt LaFleur calling plays. And defensively, they've been solid. That was my concern with this team. they have been solid on that. And I mean, even against Detroit, right? Their blowout loss in that game is on their offense. They were getting stops, especially in the second half, but they only allowed 17 points of offense to the Detroit Lions. So they've solidified themselves on that side of the ball to me, and I still think the offense is great.
That's interesting. I have the Packers one spot lower at number 7, but it's not a shot at them. I still think the Packers are very good. The team that has taken the biggest leap for me from our last power rankings is my number 6 team, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah.
And we're going to see if they make me eat my words, because there are still red flags I have about this team. I don't like Nick Sirianni. I don't think he's a good coach. Jalen Hurts still scares me, but he's been playing better football, and it really is the overwhelming talent they have offensively. Saquon Barkley changes the dynamics for them. If he's out there, if A.J. Brown is out there, if Devontae Smith is out there, they can go toe-to-toe with anybody. Saquon changes the math for the Eagles, so that's the real big difference. And I still don't think this is a great defense, but they're improving, and they have been improving.
Yeah.
So, they've got a really high-powered offense, and the Saquon Barkley addition makes the difference for me. So, the Eagles still scare me, man. Just any team coached by Sirianni scares me, but they made a big leap.
Fair.
So they're at number 6 for me.
I have them at 7, and you could argue the tiebreaker would be that Philly won week 1 against the Packers. That's definitely their best win on the year. But they've been taking care of business as of late, and they're starting to put it together, right? I mean, we've seen some strides defensively, admittedly not against the best competition, but they were good defensively against the Bengals. They've been good defensively since their bye, and we're seeing Jalen Hurts play better, and we're seeing Saquon Barkley be even more overwhelmingly dominant. A.J. Brown is back out on the field now, right? They're getting healthier offensively. There is a lot of firepower in Philadelphia, and there is a lot of defensive talent. I'm just going to hold out a tiny bit longer because I still just have a gut feeling with them. There's still certain aspects that I just don't trust with them. Like in that Jags game, dude, I just had this sinking feeling that they were in danger. And I understand that that's sort of intangible, but that's not how I feel about great football teams who consistently deliver in these spots, and it's like Sirianni going for 2 early in that game, right? That puts them in this spot where they remain vulnerable, and then they have to keep going for 2. And even when it's like the right decision to do so, once you've put yourself in that spot where you do need to go for 2 because you failed the first time, it just sort of compounds itself and it turns into this shitstorm. And that's just kind of my feeling about the Eagles ultimately, is that against great teams, they have a tendency to melt down in some of these key categories. They're so talented. I do think they're more talented than Green Bay. So those 2 teams are very close, but I just need a little more consistent execution from Philly before I can really be bought in and have faith in this team delivering up to their talent level.
Yeah, that's a good take. And I mean, when we're looking at the individual areas where I prefer Green Bay to Philadelphia, I like Green Bay's defense more. They forced the most turnovers of any team in the league. I trust their coaching way more. I mean, LaFleur's on a different level. And honestly, I like their quarterback more. I know that a lot of people were trying to pump the brakes on Jordan Love being an elite quarterback. I still think he's elite. He just needs to protect the rock a little bit more. And I get it. I was critical of Jalen Hurts, so if you want to say that I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth there, Jordan Love elevates guys, and Hurts misses throws and turns the ball over too. I just think that I trust Love a little bit more. So in key areas, I like the Packers, but I do think the Eagles are more talented, and the head-to-head win and the Saquon factor make a difference. But they're so close to one another. My number 8 team has also dealt with some injuries this year, and that's the 49ers. I get that they've been underwhelming, man. But, again, there's just you talk about the vibe with Philadelphia, man. The vibe with San Francisco is I just trust them. They're well coached. They got a quarterback that I trust. I trust Brock Purdy. They just got to get healthy, and it's tough, man. They're down a lot of key guys right now. I trust the Niners to be prepared to show up week to week. The record does not reflect how good I think this team is. Again, 2 kind of freakish in-division losses that just don't happen. I think the Niners are better than their record indicates. And again, at this point in the list, I just have a level of faith with San Francisco that they're going to figure it out and that they're going to win games.
Yeah, I have the Niners at number 8 as well, and I agree with a lot of what you said. They just have an elite offense in terms of talent. Christian McCaffrey's coming back now. They're just more talented than any of the alternatives here. Nobody else to me has surpassed the faith that I have because of what we've seen from the Niners year after year. It's a tough schedule, right? They're going to have to rack up wins in tough games, but I think they're capable of that. And the goal for them ever since they came out of the gate slow has just been get to the playoffs, get as healthy as you can. Obviously, Ayuk is now done for the year, but get CMC back out there and start playing your best football when it matters most. And if they get there, that's a team that nobody wants to see in the playoffs. And I think that they are going to get there more so at least than like my teams in the 9 and 10 spots who I just don't think are as talented. I just don't think they have that kind of ceiling. At number 9, I have the Washington Commanders. And I just think that this is an awesome offense. I mean, really, my outlook on this team hasn't changed. I think I've had them at number 9 for like the last 3 editions of the power rankings, maybe. I think they are a completely dynamic offense, one of the absolute best in football, super balanced between their ability to run the ball and pass the ball, but they're just a bad defense. And when you're this one-sided as a football team, I can only be so high on you, and that's why I do still prefer the Packers and the Eagles and the Niners. All these teams can put up points on you in bunches, and even though none of the teams that I just mentioned have proven themselves to be great defenses, they've proven themselves to be okay defenses, and they have talent that Washington just doesn't. So that's why I'm keeping them down at 9, and it's probably going to be hard for them to climb higher than that.
The Commanders are one of my first 3 teams off the list. We'll see how the introduction of Marshawn Lattimore changes that, because corner's been their biggest hole all year long. Like, they've just been getting cooked on the back end. So if he makes a meaningful difference, I think that's probably their route, because they've got a good defensive front. I like their defensive front. I like Luvu. I like individual pieces in the secondary. Like, I like Chin, but it's really about those corners figuring it out. So maybe Lattimore will be the difference. So they're off my list. In my 9 spot, I have the Texans. I think the Texans are a more complete team, but I am worried about them. You asked if I was worried about them last episode, and I was like, no, not really. I think they need Nico Collins, and I think they need Will Anderson.
Oh, yeah.
That's my take. If those guys are healthy, I think the Texans are a dangerous team. Dangerous in like the Eagles, Packers tier. I still don't look at them as like a Super Bowl contender, but they need those guys, and so that's something to monitor. But they had a bad loss, but nothing that would warrant to me leaving them out of my top 10 just yet. I still believe in C.J. Stroud. I still think this is a solid team on both sides of the ball. But in terms of their winning a playoff game type of expectations, they need Will Anderson. They need Nico Collins.
Absolutely. And the good news is Nico Collins is perhaps coming back this week. Will Anderson, it doesn't look like he's dealing with a long-term thing. So why have the Texans at number 10? And I'm not going to lie to you, Logan. I really considered leaving them off this list. And in fact, I thought that I was going to. And the reason for that is twofold. Number 1, I've been impressed by your Pittsburgh Steelers. And I know that defense is elite. And now they add Preston Smith to their pass rush. And the offense has been impressive under Russell Wilson over these last couple weeks. And they just have an aspect of the game at which they are reliably elite, and that's defense. And when the offense is trending upwards and we're seeing some more explosive plays through the air, I'm cautiously optimistic about that side of the ball. I do think this is easily the best Steelers team that we've seen in a few years because they're a more serious offense. I also think the Chargers are worthy of consideration for this spot because that defense is awesome. Now, it's not as good as the numbers would suggest, in my opinion, because they faced a lot of shit offenses, but it's definitely better than I expected. And they have Justin Herbert. And even if the overall offensive results haven't been great and the talent around him isn't great, they have an elite quarterback who I believe in. And when you check those 2 boxes, quarterback, defense, I'm normally pretty bought in there. But the offense is limited. The defense isn't as good as the numbers have suggested. So I'm going to give the Texans the 10 spot for now. But they play the Lions on Sunday Night Football, Logan, and I kind of think they're going to get destroyed. And if they do, then Houston will no longer be in my top 10 because that will be the confirmation of my worst fears about them. There's just a lot of mediocrity with this football team right now. They're 16th in points per drive scored on the year. They're 15th in points per drive allowed. The big number is that they are +1 in terms of point differential this season. Not +1 points per game, Logan. They are +1 points over the entire course of the season. That's a big red flag for a 6-3 football team. And injuries have been rough on them. Diggs is done for the year, of course, now. Getting Nico Collins back will help. You'll have a reliably elite receiver on the field. Doesn't change the fact that this offensive line fucking sucks and has been largely responsible for CJ having a couple of really rough games over the last few weeks. This defense is good, and that's why I ultimately keep them in here, because I do believe in this defense. They're not great against the run, but the pass rush is very legit. I think that the secondary play, specifically the corner play, is legit. It's not a great defense, but it is a good one. And so for now, I will give them the slight edge over Pittsburgh because I respect CJ so much. And even though I think he has a terrible offensive line in front of him, he's able to make enough magic happen to where this offense still, to me, just has a different ceiling than what you get in Pittsburgh. And even without Diggs, I mean, there are still weapons here when Nico Collins is out on the field. But it's close, man. And I just can't see Pittsburgh getting destroyed in the way that I can see the Texans kind of getting destroyed, where they're just completely manhandled at the line of scrimmage offensively. And we've seen it. Like, we saw it against the Vikings, right? They got destroyed in that game. And it was an ugly game against the Jets where they were really outclassed. So I am very worried about the Texans. I do not think that they are in the same group where I always had them fourth in the AFC, but I had them as like a clear fourth, right? Like the division winners in the AFC are the four best teams. I think the Steelers and Chargers are both right there with them and very easily could overtake them, depending on how these next couple of weeks go.
Yeah, those are the next two teams on my list, too, and I bit the bullet. I put the Steelers at number 10.
Let's go.
This is the prove it week. Please don't make me eat my words, guys. I've been cautiously optimistic this entire year. As you mentioned, I do believe. I think this is the best Pittsburgh Steelers team since 2011, 2012.
Whoa.
Really?
You think this is better than like the 2016-17 range when they had their best offenses?
Let me say total, because that team was just – the reason I say that is because that team was so flawed defensively. We couldn't stop anybody, right? We could have a track meet, and those games were fun to watch, but we weren't a fundamentally sound football team. This is the best defense we have had since 2011, since 2012, with Woodley and Harrison and, you know, James Ferrier and Troy Polamalu and Ryan Clark and all those guys, right? I do think that, and I think this is the most complete team that we've had since then. So I've been cautiously optimistic all year, and normally I'm the guy that's going to blow the Steelers' expectations out of the water. We're delusionally going to the Super Bowl. You know, I'm drinking that Steelers hopium.
Mm-hmm. So
I really hope the Steelers don't make me eat my words this week, but I look at the other teams that are just off my list. At number 11, well, we beat the Chargers. The Chargers are my number 11 team. Okay. Well, the Steelers beat the Jets. They're my number 12 team. At number 13, wow. And the only reason I do that is
Jets
because
over the Commanders?
The Jets have a defense, you know.
You're a sick puppy. That's fair. I do think the Jets are definitely better than their record, but
the Commanders are a 13 for me. So if the Steelers beat the Commanders, they will convincingly be the number 10 team to me in my power rankings, and I will be moved. That's the final hurdle that they have to get over. Defense, I'm not worried about. Now, this is a real test. I think this is probably the best offense that we've played all year that we're going to play against Washington. So this is going to be interesting. We got to keep Jaden Daniels in the pocket. TJ's got to get home. We'll see how they hold up. The key to the Pittsburgh Steelers, Russell Wilson has to get the ball to George Pickens. If Russell Wilson does that, all will be fine. That's the hurdle, man. That's the hurdle. If Russell Wilson can keep getting the ball to George Pickens. They just made a trade for Mike Williams. I'm going to keep it 100 stack with you guys. I'm not moved by that at all. That has no meaning on the Steelers finally being number 10. I think Mike Williams, to be quite frank, I'm going to root for you, Mike. Sure. I think Mike Williams kind of sucks. I think Mike Williams kind of stinks.
I don't disagree.
I think his hands are bad. I don't think he's a really good route runner, and I get it. He's been dealing with an injury this year. It's hard. I'm going to hope that that's the reason why he had been so underwhelming in New York. But I've never been a big Mike Williams guy. That doesn't make a big difference to me. Preston Smith, to me, we'll see him on the field. I like Preston Smith. Now, I think Preston Smith is a good football player. I just don't know how much burn he's going to get because this is already a really deep Steelers front line. But that's why I like the move. We are adding depth at an important position on the football field. So I've avoided it all season, and I've done it. My Steelers are at number 10. We will see how that goes. We'll update you guys on Sunday with how I'm feeling about that one.
I like it, man. I mean, again, the defense is reliably elite, and the offense looks solid right now. I had them penciled in above the Texans, and then I said, let me not disrespect CJ Stroud.
CJ makes all the difference. That's why
CJ
I couldn't
Stroud
do it
is a dude. CJ Stroud is a quarterback who I have a tremendous amount of faith in. So I'll hold off, but we'll see. I'm definitely worried about those Texans. All right, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this one. Make sure you go check out the NBA episode we did today on Hoops Tonight with Jason Timpf. I thought that we had a ton of fun on that one, covered a lot. Consider that sort of our midweek NBA show. We'll have something on Friday, but that can hold you over, give you your fix for a couple of days. Definitely go check that out on his YouTube channel. If you want more of our content, NBA and NFL, well then of course you can subscribe to our YouTube channel if you aren't already. We have all of our full-length shows. Yesterday I did a video breakdown on Evan Mobley, which was a ton of fun. It's been so great to see him really improve this year. One of my favorite prospects ever. And you can listen to all of our shows across all audio platforms. You can also follow us across social media, TikTok, Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at @nerd_sesh to see clips from the show, graphics from the show, and all of our short-form trivia content. And if you want, you can join our Discord to chat it up with the gang. The link to that is at the link tree across our social media bios. So as always, appreciate you guys a bunch. Hope everybody's doing all right today. As always, I've been Carson Brabber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.